Welcome to 28.5, where we explore a unique and authentic perspective on the women's game, break down upcoming matchups, and discuss the latest news and trends in women's basketball. We are your hosts. I'm Sydney Story, and I played at the University of Tennessee under Pat Summitt.
And I'm Becca Goodman, and I played at the University of Notre Dame under Muffet McGraw. And we're thrilled to have you join us today. Before we jump in, make sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you enjoy what you hear, be sure to tune in each week and support and share the love. Now let's get started with today's episode.
Becca, what's up? Long time no talk.
Hey, Sid, another great week of women's basketball. Pumped about it.
We're really getting off to a good start, aren't we? I just think women's basketball is not disappointing. Last season, this season, already shaping out to be a great season. It's really, like we say, an exciting time for women's basketball.
The best part is it's unpredictable, right? Just when you think there won't be any upsets, and there wasn't really for a long time in the women's game. You kind of had your set wins that would always get the dub, but now it's, I think as we saw last week and what we'll dig into is there were some upsets and just some overall good games to watch and see, and it's never a dull day in women's basketball. So I'm glad we get to dig into it here.
It's great, and I'm excited to cover it each week. This week, we have four main things we're going to hit. We're going to call them quarters, just like our games. We've got four quarters to walk through today. So I'm excited to walk through it with this format. With that, these four quarters that we're going to hit. Quarter number one is the top 25 ranking movement. So all of the changes in the top 25 that we saw week over week. Quarter number two is the post-game analysis. So we're going to give a recap from the Sunday games and what happened there. Quarter three, upcoming matchups that we've got happening this weekend. And then quarter four, what's in the news? A lot of good stuff out there for women's sports and women's basketball. So we want to touch on some of that as well.
Awesome. Let's get started. Let's jump into that first quarter. Get this game kicked off, right?
Yeah, let's do it. That top 25 rankings.
Yes. So jumping in, the top 8 teams, they've remained the same this week. There hasn't been a lot of upsets there. They've had that consistency. I know we've highlighted South Carolina, UConn, UCLA, and Texas, and Iowa State. A lot of those are the part of the top 8 that have had some good games, some good early tests to kind of get over and kind of see how they react, right? Maybe not everyone's playing the best that they want, but anytime you get a chance to step on the court and see how your team handles adversity and gets a win, that's a good thing for sure. Oklahoma moved into 9th and Kansas State moved in at 10. A couple shakeups there. Nothing crazy, but great to see Oklahoma and Kansas State make the top 10 for sure. NC State dropped to 13th after they lost to South Carolina, which we'll touch on a little bit later in our post-game analysis breakdown. What are you thinking, Sid?
I'm thinking about looking at the list now. When I look at those former Pac-12 schools, so you see Stanford and Oregon enter the rankings after impressive starts to their season, really. The number 24 Stanford Cardinal, under coach Kate Pay, they won their first 3 games by an average of 41 points. So Stanford and the Cardinal not to be dismissed so far this season. They really are approaching the season in the right light and really taking care of business these first few games here. And then when you think about it, heading into the season, the Cardinal had been ranked in the preseason poll every year since 2000 until this season. So I think they maybe had a little chip on their shoulder and they've come out with a strong start here. That other school, Oregon Ducks, who also had an impressive win this past week, they now take the number 25 spot, which is cool for them. Really excited to see that. I think they could continue to be a good women's basketball program. So I do like it when they win out there on the West Coast. And they enter the poll, like I said, ranked number 25. They had a 2-point home win over then number 12 Baylor. So we're going to highlight that a little bit in the recap from this past weekend. But they did snap a 13-game losing streak to ranked opponents for Oregon there. So that's something that's worth highlighting as we talk about the Oregon Ducks. And then the last one I do want to mention, a talking point about Creighton, Indiana, Florida State. They fell out of the poll after early losses. The Blue Jays, so you got the Creighton Blue Jays, they lost at South Dakota State. The Hoosiers, good old IU, they lost at home to Harvard in overtime. We're going to talk about that one here in a second. And then you have the Florida State Seminoles who lost at Illinois. I think Illinois is a little bit of a dark horse this year. They are are capable of making a splash in the Big Ten in the NCAA tournament. So I'm sure we're going to be highlighting them at least once or twice throughout the season. They also joined the poll at number 23. So good for the Fighting Illini there. Stepping back to the IU loss to Harvard at home in overtime. So they lose 72-68. And really, they couldn't handle Harvard's D. Harvard created a ton of turnovers by pressing really hard. So IU has 27 turnovers in that game. If you're a part of the IU coaching staff right now, I think you're really going to work on how do we take care of the ball? How do we improve our decision making? All of that good stuff. Some obvious stuff there when you're turning over the ball that much. There might be some bigger issues, if you ask me, but worth highlighting because IU has had such successful seasons the past 5, 6, 7 years. So to see them drop out of the top 25 is not a good thing, but a lot of season to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I know IU Coach Terry, she's really turned that program around, had a couple big names, always make a good run in the tournament. So I'm assuming it's a lot of like early game jitters, right? It's at home, a lot of hype to live up to, plus maybe people in new roles. So definitely a heartbreaker to lose in overtime and then to kind of fall out of the top 25 and then to snap that 18 game win streak. I mean, it's right. Bad things come in threes, and then this was one of them. But it's, as you mentioned, tons of basketball left to play, and still so early. Anytime you get a loss early on in the season, it's to add that chip on your shoulder, like you mentioned. You know, Stanford not being ranked. Kate Pay is a new coach. A lot of new pieces here in this women's basketball season. That's exciting to watch, and excited to see where it ends up for sure. All right, I think we'll jump into our second quarter here pretty quick. That was a quick first quarter, but second quarter, just wanted to jump into some post-game analysis and some recap from Sunday's games. We're going to start with the Duke Maryland game. This one, you know, I was totally wrong on this. I thought Duke would come out, be super composed, really kind of hold their own when it comes to the offensive tempo, set the tone for the game. I kind of just figured them being ranked previously before, knowing how Kara Lawson kind of gets her team prepped and prepared. Definitely was thrown off when, you know, Duke started the game missing tons of layups, never really got into a flow on offense. The shocking part with that is they returned 82% of their points from last year. So for that to not kind of show up this game or to just be off, definitely more work's got to be put in on the shooting gun, getting shots up, and just getting back to that level of comfortability. Defensively, though, Duke brought it. They were definitely intense. They're long, they're lengthy. They got out and they were aggressive. It's really hard when you can't score on the offensive end to get points when, you know, you're not going to be perfect on the defensive end, but if you can't really put the ball through the hoop, it's still tough, right? It was tough. And I will just say Maryland came out hot. They were physical. They were looking to pound it inside. They got some great pickups from the transfer portal. I just loved their gameplay. They wanted to push the ball, and they just seemed to always be on the attack, where I kind of thought that would have been Duke, especially just knowing Duke, having that high ranking and kind of being that known program. I think Maryland's always been either super up in the polls and playing or like middle of the pack or towards the bottom. So it's great to see them kind of come out and you know, give it to Duke on the chin a little bit, because they absolutely played a physical game that I don't think helped Duke at all. What were your thoughts?
I'm with you. From the very beginning, before the game even started, they were highlighting the Maryland players, and a day or a couple days before the game, they were going around campus in a golf cart and asking students to please come to the game, that it's a big game for them on Sunday against Duke. And I think that speaks to the level of importance that those Maryland players saw in the game. Duke ranked above them, an early tough matchup for them. And I think they took it seriously. And I really think that Maryland jumped all over it from the beginning of the game. And you mentioned a lot of this. Duke brings tough defense. I was watching how they guard ball screens and the strong hedges and the defensive rotations out of traps. And I mean, I think that they're really well coached on the defensive end. And I can attest to Kara Lawson. I mean, she's one of Pat's girls and obviously has played at multiple levels and coached at multiple levels after Tennessee. But watching some of those rotations, I was like going back to my practice days with Pat. I mean, they were textbook. So I think they're bringing it on the defensive end. Maybe the scoreboard doesn't say that, right? Maryland scores 85 points. But I think Duke's capable of locking down most teams. I think Maryland just wanted it.
Yeah.
Offensively, they've got some girls that are capable of scoring, of taking over the game. A couple of them did in spurts, and I thought that was really cool to see some of that balance. Whereas Duke, to me, the only player that stuck out was the freshman, number 35, Toby Fournier. She, I thought, was fantastic. You would have not known she was a freshman out there. She's very good around the basket. She had 15 points, not a ton, but she leads it for Duke, right? That's my point of not a ton of scoring coming from players that are going to score 20 plus points, unless it's going to be her, maybe. She's a freshman. This is probably her first biggest game playing against Maryland. And I'm excited to see what she does, but I think she's going to need some more support around her that can step up and put points on the board. That's exactly what you were saying also. And Duke trailed the entire game, never had the lead. It's hard to trail most of the game and then take it over in the end, especially on the road. They were unable to do that. And a true testament to Maryland and what they brought. I think they look like to your point, a good Brenda Freeze team, right? We've seen some of those Maryland teams that are just kind of average, but when Brenda's teams are competing and really taking over games like they did on Sunday, Maryland could be a dark horse this year. Do I think they're Final Four level? No, I don't at this point. Could they get there? Absolutely. And I think some of it to me was some of their transfers that they had come in this year. So they look like a completely different team when you watch them last year versus this year. They have Christina Dulce, Big East co-defensive player of the year last year at Villanova. And then you've got Smickle, a transfer from Rutgers. So both of those two players combined for 25 points and 17 rebounds for Maryland. So they're now on people's radars. This was a great kickoff to Sunday. This game was. I thought it was really good women's basketball.
Isn't it nuts that, the final score was 85 to 80 and we're sitting here saying, man, they played good D. Man, Duke didn't really get it in an offensive flow. They missed so many layups. Like, this game could have been insane when it came to scoring just because Duke missed so much on the offensive end. But when you watch the game, it was just a struggle for Duke to score. But they also were playing good defense but gave up 85 points. I think that just high level, like, the girls' game is gaming. It's just at a different level compared to where it was. You're not going to have those low-scoring games where it's 65 to 42. We're past that, especially in the top 25. These teams are putting up numbers, showing up when it's time to play, and trying to make an upset because it can happen to anybody. So definitely interested to see how Maryland continues to play and how Duke bounces back.
Absolutely. And this moves Maryland up to number 11 in the polls. So they jumped 7 spots with that win. So not a bad first big game for them. That's for sure.
Definitely not.
All right. The next game on the docket from Sunday was South Carolina versus NC State. So South Carolina wins this one with a pretty big margin, 71 to 57. Couple big call outs from my end. I had mentioned how well Chloe Kitts played in the previous game against Michigan that we watched. She's on the bench. She's got a violation of team academic policy, so she doesn't play the whole game. But South Carolina answers because of their depth, and we've talked a ton about that. And you've got Ashlyn Watkins, who's back. So her charges were dismissed and almost at full go, other than Chloe Kitts for South Carolina. A big thing that I do want to mention here for South Carolina is Pau Pau. And I mentioned in the Michigan game that we didn't really see her step up and take over the game and bring that leadership role that she could have down the stretch in that game. But in this game, she really did. I thought Pau Pau played excellent. She really showed us what she's capable in that game. I was excited to see that. I think South Carolina is that much better when Pau Pau is playing her A game. With that, she scores 23 points and leads all scorers. So it was great to see Pau Pau step up. And then Malaysia Fawali steps up. Didn't really have a very big game against Michigan, but she steps up against NC State. She had 18, 12 of those coming in the first half. Really was a big first half staple for them. And a big call up from my end on the NC State side was the fact that they had 9 turnovers in the first quarter. So you talk about trying to play against South Carolina, who can put up a lot of points, who plays very fast, and they're super aggressive in everything that they do. And you turn the ball over 9 times in the first quarter. Good luck hanging with them for the rest of the game at that point. Like, you've got to play a solid 40 minutes of basketball if you're going to want to compete and play well against South Carolina, which is what Michigan did. Teams are capable of doing that. To me, NC State wasn't all that impressed, to be honest. What were your thoughts?
Exactly, echoing the same thing you had. I do know South Carolina. This win is multiple 40 plus game winning streaks they're on right now. Pau Pau absolutely showed up. I think that was something we were a bit critical of in the last game. I just think she came in, she slowed it down the last 4 minutes when NC State got within 7 after South Carolina was up 20. She completely called the shots, got him in an offense, spread the floor. She even had great turnovers on defense. She could have got the ball in transition and gone to score for a layup, understood time possession, pulled it back out, got him in an offense, and got a better shot. So she absolutely was pow pow. She showed up. She did what she had to do. And I think that's the reason why it wasn't very close towards the end of the game, obviously. NC State for me on my end. James played well, came back after getting down 20. They really look inside in the post. They have that big post player who's a sophomore. Rivers, one of their leading scorers coming back, only had 4 points, 1 of 7 from the floor. So keen to get her going a bit more, maybe get her some easier shots, get to the free throw line, would have helped calm her down a bit. NC State just allowed way too many points in the paint. 50. South Carolina scored 50 points in the paint. I mean, that right there that's the game. You know what I mean? Like that. It's
Absolutely.
And I understand they're big. I understand 50 of their 71 points were in the paint. That's nuts. It's extremely efficient for South Carolina have the focus be in the paint. They know that it's working. They know it's like a weak link at that point. If you know you have the advantage, you're going to consistently go back to what's working. South Carolina is the best. Let's be real, right? They're ranked number 1 for a reason, returning champs. So they're going to get more shots at them and maybe even see them in the tournament again, where we can fine tune stuff. A lot of this is just so early in the season, trying to get the consistency in players to step up, make plays, get stops. Every media timeout or quarter is a chance for you to reset. Did you win that time frame, right? Are you up 5, down 5? Where are you at? What do you have to get to? And this one definitely being down 20, getting it to 7, and then kind of losing by 14. It's a tale of many different quarters there, right? Many different quarters.
Yeah, for sure. And then jumping into the third game, we wanted to highlight UConn versus South Florida. UConn wins this one 86-49. And really, Paige Beckers has 22. She leads all scorers. And I think we're going to be saying that a ton in a lot of games this year. She stays healthy. She's going to put some points up. And that's very exciting for our game to watch Paige go off and have some of these big games here. What we really wanted to highlight in this game is Gino Auriemma. So he is now 1 victory behind retired Stanford coach Tara Vanderveer for the most wins with 1,216. So he could tie Vanderveer when the Huskies play North Carolina tonight, Friday night here. So if they win, then the potential record-breaking win could come at home November 20th against Farley Dickinson. I think that'll be a huge accomplishment for Gino. Men's or women's to be the all-time winningest coach with the most career wins is a huge accomplishment. I was there on the court playing for Pat when she got to 1,000 wins. That was awesome to be a part of, and a big celebration after that game. And since Pat stepping down, we've seen a lot of other coaches surpass that 1,000 win column, and it's only climbing for this record here.
Yeah, absolutely. Props to Gino. As we mentioned before, he's been there a while, but he's absolutely made the team what it is. He knows how to consistently build a great team, whether it's specific players that are the stars, but the supporting cast is also so efficient, knows their role, jumps in, does their jobs. Huge accomplishment popping up. Going to be excited to watch the UConn North Carolina game.
You can tell that we've got a Notre Dame grad and a Tennessee grad on the mic talking about Gino. But, haters are going to hate. We can't deny that he's won a lot of ball games here and has been very successful. So absolutely. I'm only hoping that Kim Caldwell over for the Lady Vols can, over a course of a few decades here, do something big and bring some more success to the Tennessee Lady Vols there. But we'll see. I think Gino's really setting the bar for everyone to chase. The next big game, I'm totally going to let you take. And if you want to bring me in, you can, Becca. But It is the Notre Dame versus Purdue game, and it was all Irish. So I'll let you take that one.
Yes, jumping into the Notre Dame Purdue game. I want to highlight that we hope Niele Ivey will also be one of those coaches that has a huge winning record in a couple years here, and she can continue to put in those wins. So shout out Niele, get those dubs. This game, the Purdue ND game, man, this was insane. Hannah Hidalgo is just a different level of fast, a different level of intense, a different level of just passion for the game. This girl, and I mean, like, she's the type of player. If I was on the court, right, and I'm a post, so I'm in the back, I am just hyping her up from the back just to let her go crazy. She is ball pressuring full court. At one point, she herself got them a 10-second backcourt violation just because in the second or first quarter, she wanted to just pressure the ball. She wanted to make the guards for Purdue's life hell. Like, that is just who she is and what she loves to do. And she knows that turns into offense for her. But to see somebody who just absolutely loves to play defense in every way, right? She has her hands, she's digging down when girls are cutting to the basket, trying to get steals. She's Hannah. Like, Hannah is, man, she's so fast, and she just plays with so much passion. Somebody who's just chest bumping and yelling in the crowd because she's excited she got a girl to turn the ball over. Like, what a
there's
dream.
not a competitor like her in the game right now. What
No.
she brings.
No.
What a dream is right. You would have thought that they were down by 10 the way she was playing with 5 minutes to go. I mean, that girl wants to win every possession. You can't teach that.
Yeah, no, that's not something you can teach, and don't even try to control it. Let her just be her. And just because she's just going to give you nothing but good stuff, right? So the game started super fast. Notre Dame was up 9-0. Halfway through the first quarter, it was Hannah Hidalgo 9, Purdue 3. Hannah finishes the game with 17 points, 4 rebounds, 4 steals. Everything we just mentioned about Notre Dame, we didn't even mention Olivia Miles. Sonia Citron was back. Kate Cavall in the post. Leah Tu King. I think it just goes to show you when every person scores for the bench that's capable of playing comes in and gives you a bucket. I mean, that's what Notre Dame did. We had Prosper came in, Emma, Sarah, I mean, everybody, and we still don't have Maddie Wesbeld back. It's just great to see Notre Dame continuing just to roll. We'll obviously get a few folks back healthy. I mentioned Maddie, and then Liza, the transfer from Marquette. She's still out as well. Purdue, new roster for Purdue. They're building over there. What I noticed is they have a lot of players, like even from IU Purdue Fort Wayne. So they're grabbing and picking interstate kids to come and try to make a splash and then to reach their full potential, which is amazing. They're not there yet. They absolutely had runs and spurts where they competed. They were able to knock down some shots. Their leading scorer was Lombard with 13. Collier had 11 and Bass had 10. And then everybody else after that was like 2 or 6. So hard to put up numbers when you have a fast-paced, high-level, high-tempo team like Notre Dame who loves to run and gun, push the ball, and ball pressure. Our defense looked pretty good. But again, you have Hannah finishing the game with 28. Her halftime stat was 17 earlier, so apologies for that. Finished the game with 28. Liv had 17. Sonia had 14 on her comeback. And then Leah Tu King had 18. Just a lot of point production and good stuff. Sid, what'd you see? What didn't I hit on?
Yeah. I know. I think you hit on and touched on a lot of it from what I saw also. Obviously, we know Hannah Hidalgo and Olivia Miles arguably are the best backcourt in the country. I think it's hard to top those two together, and they're showing that they can play well together, which is also huge. To me, King is like that extra for them.
Mm-hmm.
When I watched her play against Purdue in a couple of these games here, I think she's going to be some of that secret sauce. Sonia brings what she's going to bring. She's a fantastic player. Westbelt, like a lot of these other players who have been at Notre Dame, we kind of know what they can do. But seeing King step up like she's stepped up, I think is really promising for Notre Dame. She had 15 rebounds.
Yeah,
I don't care who you're playing. You have 15 boards. That's a good night for you. 15 rebounds and 18 points. So a double-double there. And somebody who maybe isn't going to get a lot of the hype because you've got Hannah Hidalgo and Olivia Miles and some of these other players. But, man, she does some of that dirty work, and I think she's solid for Notre Dame.
And I don't think she wasn't coming in, right? She's a transfer from Pitt, grad student. I don't think she was coming into Notre Dame to be a starter, right? That wasn't her role because we had Maddie, we have that Liza, we have Kate Caval. So we have our bigs already kind of lined up and set up. But when people are out, there is no production downfall whatsoever. If anything, if she's on pace to just continue to average double doubles, I mean, now you're fighting with starting spots. Who do you play? Do you just have rotations? Is it whoever's hot that game? So awesome to see that type of high production and who can come in and really give you those minutes to set the tone. I think it's the one thing that Notre Dame kind of hasn't had is a deep bench, especially when it comes to the post. So very exciting to continue to watch them throughout the year.
Yeah, good in-state rivalry game there. Obviously, Notre Dame really took it to them and won 102-58 there. So big gap in that scoreboard. And I think if you look stat to stat, probably most stats Notre Dame won pretty handedly. So another game we want to mention is Baylor versus Oregon. So Oregon does win this one. They beat Baylor, even though Oregon wasn't ranked, right? Baylor was ranked 12th. Oregon comes in at home and beats them there 76-74. And I think this one could have looked much more lopsided. In the fourth quarter there, Oregon blew a 16-point fourth quarter lead and then at the end had to regain that lead and ultimately win the game. So kind of crazy to see a fourth quarter 16-point lead blown. You don't see that a ton, and they were able to come out on top anyways. But on Sunday night, they did snap a 14-game losing streak against ranked opponents. So Oregon is kind of getting back on the map here. Again, a Big Ten school now. So a little bit different. They're going to be playing a different conference this year. And I don't think you can sleep on Oregon. That's for sure.
No, absolutely not. I didn't get to watch a lot of this game, but just to kind of hear your points and what you're mentioning, I didn't see this upset coming. I know Sabrina Ionescu was at the game, hyping him up, and it was just great to see a lot of graduate alumni support, whether they're in the WNBA or playing abroad or just, living their lives being an adult, right? It was great to see them coming back and just show that support. And I thought this upset was something I didn't see coming. So good call, Sid. I know you mentioned it and you called him, so you get that point.
I called that one. All right, cool. I'll take it. And the next game we want to highlight is Iowa versus Virginia Tech. So Iowa wins this one 71-52. A lot we want to kind of debrief on this game. It was a good game. I think the score is a little lopsided. I thought Iowa came out from the get-go ready to go. Virginia Tech, maybe not as deep. Offensively, struggled a little bit more. Iowa has a few players that are just capable of putting up a lot of points. And the first one I want to highlight here is Lucy Olson. She's a transfer from Villanova. She spent 3 seasons there. So she's a senior transfer into Iowa. She's got a scorer's mentality. You can just tell the way she carries herself on the court, how she's looking to score, looking to get the ball in her hands. She's exciting to watch. She's got the absolute green light from Jan Jensen. Was third in the country in scoring last season. So she averaged 23.3 points per game behind Caitlin Clark and Juju Watkins last year. So when you talk about what Lucy Olson is capable of doing, that's it, right? She can absolutely take over games. And Hannah Stolke comes back. She's really extending her game a little bit. She's not playing as much under the basket. I'm sure you noticed that one, Becca.
I did.
Yep. Yeah, which I'm kind of excited about that because now you've got O'Grady who steps in and she has 18 points. They did not have an answer for O'Grady.
She was 9 for 9. She was perfect from the floor.
That's great.
Perfect. Yeah. I know people might be like, well, she's a post. It's close. No, I mean, the guards were really creating for her and getting her great looks and good opportunities. But she was making some moves in there on her own. The Iowa bench was getting hype. I mean, she's come leaps and bounds from where she was last year. And I think she just knew she had to come in, be more efficient, post up. And then she's also moving without the ball, right? A lot of times we talk about the guards it's a focus on the guards, or you set ball screen and rolls, but you also have to watch your defender, right? If your defender is going to help on the guard, you have to move to the open spot. You're not open where you're standing. You're open where there's the spot for a good shot and the guard can get you the ball. So Addison O'Grady, awesome. Sorry, I jumped in there. You're right. You passed it to me. She was efficient as all get 9 and 9, 9 of 9. That was amazing.
Yeah, she had maybe the game of her life. Hopefully not if you're a Hawkeye fan. Hopefully she brings that every game. But You're right. I mean, I was watching her in the way she was trying to get position before the ball even moved
Hmm.
was telling to me that she's that mature player now, that she's looking to score more and be more involved in the scoring column. And the guards had some great passes to her too. I mean, those
Hmm.
textbook lob passes right over the top, stuff you teach in fourth grade when you're trying to teach high-low buddy
Yep.
pass stuff.
Yep.
I mean, she was sealing and they were getting her the ball, and 9 for 9, hard to be that. I mean, that's a pretty good night for O'Grady there. The other person I wanted to also highlight is Taylor Stremlow. She's a freshman and played some decent minutes for a freshman in a big game like this. I'm really excited to see how Jan and the staff continue to develop her over the course of her career. She is a 5'10 freshman. She's from Verona, Wisconsin. She's a heady guard. You can tell that she's thinking the game. She's got a high IQ of the game. She had that reverse layup off that rebound. And I was
Hmm.
like, wow, who's this player? Right now, I'm
Hmm.
like instantly looking her up and looking a little bit about her background. And just really cool to see that Jan trusted in a freshman and put her in and gave her the minutes that she gave her. And like I said, I'm excited to see how she develops. And for me, overall, when I look at Iowa, they were not ranked in the top 25 AP poll, and I think they should be
Hmm.
at some point here. They just got to keep winning, right? But I
Yeah.
do think they have a lot of depth. And if I'm Iowa right now, and I say this a lot, I got that chip on my shoulder. I'm looking to just absolutely make statements in every game we play, and they have the personnel to do that. And so I think that's going to be fun to watch. They were not even ranked in the top 5 of the Big Ten. So the Big Ten only does top 5 rankings, and they weren't even in the top 5 for the Big Ten, which I think is a big knock on them. And to me, again, you're bringing that chip, and you're trying to go to work, and I think they will. I think Jan Jensen gets it and has all the experience in the world, and is going to have her team playing really well in the Big Ten this year. And Virginia Tech just really didn't have an answer to Iowa's inside game and their depth. And I thought that was, to me, high level, the story of the game. What was your take on it, Becca?
Yeah. So going back, Lucy Olson, I think Iowa Hawkeye fans are thrilled to have her. She's by no means a replacement to Caitlin Clark. She is Lucy Olson. She's her own player. But I do know people have asked her, how do you feel about being in the, mentioned? And she just loved the fact it's a loves being mentioned in the same sentence as Caitlin Clark. And who wouldn't, right? She's doing great things on the next level. But Lucy Olson came in. She started the game 3 for 4. She hit a pull up, a layup, and a 3-pointer. Just talk about efficient, doing a little bit of everything from every spot on the floor, just showing her versatility there. It was great to see, just not really knowing how she would gel with the Iowa team. And obviously, they've been practicing and putting in work, and you could tell that. But just to actually see her get on the court, she looked so natural, very comfortable, calm even. I think Iowa is just as good, just different. They're just different. That's all, right? Like Hannah Stolke, as you mentioned, now she was primarily that back to the basket player. She was being the Addison O'Grady, standing there, getting open, getting a pass from a cutting guard. Now she's catching and ripping from the wing and attacking. Like it's interesting to see over the course of the preseason. I heard that they mentioned they had her as more of a stretch four, so she's been putting work in her game. And Hannah Stolke can run, run, run. That girl was in track. They highlighted it during the game, her winning some sprints. I mean, she never gets tired. And imagine having Addison O'Grady inside in the paint and then her rebounding outlet and Hannah just sprints the floor and passing it up to her. I mean, that happened, I don't know how many times, but normally last year it was Hannah rebounding, then passing it out, then running down the court. So it's great to see, I don't know, Hannah get possibly more breath, right? Like she's not going to be as tired, which is also terrifying. I thought the Iowa guards in general were really good at finding their post players, handling it, eyes up, hitting open players. But Lucy Olson and Carly Wenzel from Virginia Tech really went at it this game. In the beginning, there were some cheap shots getting thrown, whether it was, a jump ball or an arm flinging by. So you could tell it was already that type of game. And I think Carly Wenzel, she started strong. She had their first 7 of the 9 points. She had a couple reverse layups. She finished the game with 14, so she kind of slowed down the second half. And then Rose Mishaw, who's a transfer from Minnesota, she specifically mentioned that she wanted to come to Virginia Tech to be able to push the ball as a post player and be in shape. So I just think that's the evolution of the women's basketball game, right? Posts aren't just sitting on the block and calling for it. And then they outlet it and the play goes down to the other side. Now we're giving it and we're going and we're just as a big of a force on the offensive end as we are on the defensive end, which is awesome to see. But I think all in all, it was a great first test. Virginia Tech, again, this is kind of like an Old Miss slash NC State Duke, right? Not having enough offense to combat the offense of the other team. I think that's just a flow and get comfortable and kind of figure out where your points are going to come from. That was kind of the type of game I figured that it would get to. So all in all, it was great to see Jan Jensen on the sidelines. It was great to see Megan Duffy for her first game as a head coach. And then you had Kate Martin and Gabby from Iowa on the sidelines and Liz Kitley from Virginia Tech there to support. So I also think it's really cool that Kate Martin and Liz Kitley are both on the Las Vegas Aces. Also, like, small world,
cool.
right?
Yeah.
The game keeps growing. Game keeps growing, Sid.
Yeah, I'm excited to watch Iowa this year. I don't think that they fell off.
Mm-mm.
Granted, they don't have Caitlin Clark, right? They don't have Kate Martin and what she brought last year in that senior leadership, but they've got some talent, and I think they can make a splash. And I think Jan really knows what she's doing, having been under Lisa Bluter for years there and really being a staple in that program. So I don't think they fall off, but we'll see. It's a long season, and they're playing in the Big Ten, and the Big Ten is a pretty tough conference this year also. The last game that we wanted to mention that happened this past Sunday was Stanford versus Gonzaga. And we do want to mention that Tara, she was honored with the naming of Tara Vanderveer Court. So I thought that was really exciting and awesome for the women's game to have the women's coach on the floor. That was cool for me when I was at Tennessee because it was Pat Summit Court, and I loved that. And Pat's name was right there, Summit, giant on the court, which was really, really cool. And Stanford really honored this. You know, they come out and they win 89-58. So a big win for them, and just really cool that they were able to continue to honor Tara as they play every game at Stanford on her court.
Yeah, Tara just being a staple of the women's game, right? A coach that's been there, been through it, has made quite the name for herself, right? Hall of Famer in her own right. Had a lot of great players play pro. So just always good to see when the game gives back, right? And I think that's what this was. The school just knew she's that important and she's a staple of Stanford. So awesome to see the court get dedicated in her honor. All right, Sid, let's head to our third quarter where we're going to talk about some upcoming matchups that we have going on this weekend. Game one we wanted to highlight is UConn. They're currently ranked number 2, and they're going to take on UNC, who's ranked number 14. The game is tonight, starts at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and it's at UNC. I haven't really dug into UNC quite a bit, so I'm excited to see who's on their team, what they're working with, and how they come out. And, you know, UConn is going to be UConn, so you always know what to expect. It's got to be an efficient game, high tempo, and they have a really smart IQ. So definitely a game we're going to look into and have some good analysis for when we come back next week. The second game we wanted to highlight is Louisville, who's currently ranked 18th, versus Kentucky, who's coming in at 20th. Kentucky has the new coach, Kenny Brooks. He moved over from Virginia Tech. It's going to be great to see that Kentucky-Louisville rivalry. I'm interested to see how Jeff Walls has his team prepared. They had a loss the last game, and so it's going to be interesting to see. His motto was take it one game at a time. So obviously, this is a big game. Louisville versus Kentucky always normally is. And Georgia Amore, who's on our preseason players to watch, she's going to be big time in this game, and just kind of interested to see the flow of the game. And maybe it's a little bit new, or maybe it's a little bit old, just new players in there to see how they all interact. So that game is going to be Saturday night, and it starts at 7 p.m. Eastern, and it is at Kentucky.
I'm excited for both of these two. The weekend's a little bit more front-loaded. Last weekend, there were a ton of games on Sunday.
Yep.
So it's going to be kind of refreshing to watch some games on Friday and Saturday night here. So, and both start at 7 p.m. Eastern, so both are at night, which is also nice. The final quarter here, the fourth quarter, we want to highlight a few things that are in the news. The first one I'm going to jump into is an all-women's sports impact. So when we talk about women's sports, and there's been a lot in the news lately around women's sports being underfunded, having so much potential that's not even really tapped into. You've got somebody like Whoopi Goldberg who steps up, huge advocate for women's sports. She is launching the first global women's sports channel called AWSN, which stands for All Women's Sports Network. And with AWSN and this channel, she is using this as a home for live women's sports and for recorded women's sports around the world. So it's a broadcast of women's sporting games, 24/7 broadcast. Like I said, both live and past games that have been recorded. But when you flip on that channel, it's going to be women's sports that are being played on it, which I think is super cool for us women who have never had anything like that. So excited to see what Whoopi does there. And per her official website, the company is a global sports television network dedicated exclusively to women's sports and will be available in 65 countries. So this is a global impact for women. Everything from soccer, basketball, tennis, cricket, curling, you name it. If a woman is playing it, we're showing it.
Love it. Love it.
So that is huge for us. I just think it's such an overall women's sports impact, and I thought that was really worth highlighting. The channel has already launched in parts of Asia, including India and the Middle East. So Whoopi is saying that next week they've got a big announcement coming about the U.S. launch. So looking forward to seeing what that's all about and when we're going to have this here in the U.S.
Very cool. I'm just excited to see where it goes. I think it's a great opportunity for women's sports in general, get more airtime without it being like we have a Caitlin Clark and we're on the air because of her or because the game she's playing in the game, right? There's more of them around and more of us in many sports. So very cool. Kudos, Whoopi. I will be tuning in for sure.
Yeah. One of the big things that I want to mention here is when I think about ESPN, and I don't know, maybe you're home sick from school and you're flipping through the channels and you see ESPN on and they're talking about whatever happened the previous day, whatever sports games and top 10 highlights. And you did not see women hardly ever talked about. It would be NFL, NBA, NHL a little bit, a lot of football, a lot of baseball, a lot of basketball, but men. And I think is just a huge opportunity here. And obviously you've got folks like Whoopi Goldberg who also think it's a huge opportunity. And I just think it's great. I hope that the future for women is you turn on a channel like this and you're seeing women and not just men. So super cool.
Yep, absolutely. Jumping into our second topic of our fourth quarter, we wanted to just highlight Ohio State, who's currently ranked 12th. They are adding Katie Smith, a legend in her own right. You know, Katie Smith she was a 1996 Ohio State grad, Naismith Player, Hall of Famer, joins as the assistant coach after an 11-year WNBA coaching career, and most recently was the associate head coach of the Minnesota Lynx. So they are adding some big time women that are coming from the WNBA to help fill their roster and help give them the knowledge and make it more. It's different when you have the WNBA style and the level of complexity that gets added. It's a different business, right? So having that at the college level is always an impact because they're also adding JC Sheldon. She'll be with Ohio State full time following the WNBA offseason. She signed with the Townsville Fire of Women's National Basketball League in Australia. So that's pretty awesome playing overseas. But they play from late September through February. But she said she had to pass on that opportunity due to a lower leg injury. So she wanted to stay around the game. And she's going to come in as that personnel player development for Ohio State, her alma mater. And, you know, she's a WNBA star in her own right, got drafted playing for the Dallas Wings. So just super cool to see WNBA talent at the coaches level and player level come back to the college game and just bring their experience, knowledge, and IQ, right? Like it's very exciting to have, you know, we mentioned before kind of WNBA and NBA kind of cross paths. To have WNBA cross paths with college women's basketball, I think it just makes it all that much more possible for these girls who are, you know, currently in college, understanding I have resources that are in the WNBA. I know coaches that are in the WNBA. So a very cool opportunity here for Ohio State. And Kevin McGuff always has his team ready to go. So they're currently ranked 12th. I know we're going to see a couple of their games coming up and have some game breakdown of them and some of their matchups. So just excited to see them as a whole and continue to follow their success.
Yeah, two great ads for Ohio State there. Katie Smith, an absolute legend out of Ohio State. I just remember her being such a tough-nosed, gritty player. And to have her come back with all that experience from the WNBA, to your point, that's great for our game and great for the women's college game. And then JC Sheldon is a local legend there. So she grew up in Dublin, Ohio, very close to Columbus and where Ohio State is, and very well liked on campus and has a huge fan base. So I'm not surprised that she is going to step right back in here at Ohio State and take this role. But kudos to Kevin McGuff for going out and bringing these two players in. I think they are able to be really positive influences on the current team and to any team for that regard at the college level. And I wish that we saw more of this. You see it in pockets, but with the WNBA season primarily being in the summer and the collegiate season primarily being in the winter, why not, if you're a WNBA player, take a role like this where you can be around the game, like you said. You can rehab if you need to. You can stay in shape and work out if you need to, but be around the game, looking at the X's and O's like you do at the college game. And what an awesome opportunity for any WNBA player to be able to do something like that. The last thing we wanted to talk about in the news here is Unrivaled. It is a 3-on-3 league that's going to start this winter, and it's going to run for 8 weeks. There are going to be 36 players that are divided into 6 teams. I'm going to pause there and let you talk a little bit more about this one too, Becca, because I know that you think this is awesome, as do I, for the women's game overall.
Yeah, I mean, for Brianna Stewart and Nafisa Collier to put this league together, think about it. How many 3-on-3 tournaments did you play in growing up? Gus Mackers,
right, all around. They were so fun.
Yeah, and you're outside, and it just gives that. It's a different level of focus and IQ and gamesmanship, right? Like it's you and 2 other players, and you're on a short court, and you have to figure out how to score and make the best of it. There's no transition buckets. There's nothing like that. So it's a bit more strategic and definitely physical. So absolutely pumped to see this just being another opportunity in the women's game, right? Like, let's just continue to add these great aspects of the game where we can continue to get games on TV, merchandise to buy, fans continue to stay involved and get to see basketball, but in different forms. For us, I think 3-on-3 is very much what you do when you grow up. It just teaches you the game, spacing, stuff like that. But to see WNBA players playing 3-on-3, I think it's going to be so much more just, I mean, I don't even know how to describe the level of detail that is going to have to go into this from a playing standpoint. Who you're playing against, how you're matching up, how you're going to score, what your plays are, right? So as of now, there's 36 players. It started as 30, and then they wanted to add a couple more, so they added it to 36. They've only released, as of now, the first 32. So we have people from all over. There's a founders group of WNBA players who really started this, and they're kind of the staples. And then more and more have been wanting to add in, but they're going to be 36 girls or women divided into 6 teams. Yeah, I'm just super excited to see that they're going to play 2 games a week, with the contest, taking place on a court that it's about 2/3 the size of a WNBA one. So the teams will stay the same throughout the season. So imagine you just came off of a WNBA competitive as all heck season, and now you're going to go blow to blow at 3-on-3. Yeah, it's going to be good, Sid. It's going to be good.
It's going to be really good. I'm excited to see where it's going to be televised and how we can watch games. To me, when I think 3-on-3, we do use that as a teaching tool in the game as we're coaching. It does teach a lot of that spacing, and you learn the inside-outside game and how to play off of each other with that space. And I think this is what this is going to bring. It's going to bring space and pace to the game. And the league president calls that out specifically. The spacing we know is there. There's obviously only 6 players instead of 10 players. And then the pace of the game is going to be a lot quicker. It's that 3/4 of a size court that they're going to be playing on. So anyone who says women's basketball is too slow or it's not, fun to watch and entertaining, I think this 3-on-3 is going to bring some of that, especially because there's some of these big name players that have signed up to play. and are going to be a part of this. And I think that's going to be awesome to watch them in a 3-on-3 setting, awesome to watch them go to work in one-on-one settings, because there's going to be a lot more one-on-one. And I think that's going to be really cool. I do want to mention that they have a strong group of investors to help fund the launch. So they include folks like Carmelo Anthony, Alex Morgan, Ashton Kutcher, Steve Nash, Gino Auriemma. So there's a lot of people that are also seeing this as a great opportunity for the women's space and for sports in general. And I think that's awesome to see some of those big name people contribute to this and be an investor to this, and ultimately an investor in women's sports. And that's huge.
Yeah, they also mentioned it's going to be some of the highest average salaries in women's sports history. I mean, that's going to put some pressure on the WNBA. That's going to put some pressure on overseas opportunities, right? When you have something close to home, and just from someone who has played overseas, it's not the most fun. You hate leaving. It's, you got to learn a whole different culture, a whole different world. But for these women to be able to stay here, I think that's something that they've always talked about is the reason why they go overseas is to make that money. And now to have this option here, I think it's going to be pretty awesome. Some of those founding players include, we mentioned Breanna Stewart, Nafisa Collier, Angel Reese, Kelsey Plum, Brittany Griner, Skylar Diggins-Smith, Satu Sable, Arike Agumbawale, Jewel Lloyd, Chelsea Gray, Kalia Copper, Natisha Cloud, and Ryan Howard. So a lot of good high-level, big-time names there. Those are big-time names from the WNBA.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. That's going to be an extra splash this winter as we watch a lot of basketball here. Well, Becca, I think we can go ahead and conclude. We covered a lot today. We had a full game, all 4 quarters. I look forward to it next time.
Yep, sounds great. Let's watch some great basketball matchups, and we'll chat later.
Sounds good. See you, Beck.
That's the 28.5 final buzzer for today's episode. Don't forget to hit follow on your preferred podcast platforms to catch every play-by-play. New episodes drop each week throughout the season.
If you've enjoyed our courtside chat, drop us a review or follow us on our social media accounts. And remember, from females who have played the game, the size of the ball matters.